Something about practical magic has always lived outside the rules of normal success. It was not a major critical darling. It did not conquer the box office in the way studios dream about. And yet, somehow, it never really disappeared. It stayed alive in sleepover nostalgia, full rewatch culture, sisterhood conversations, witchy mood boards, and that strange category of movies people do not just remember, but protect. That is why the first trailer for Practical Magic matters so much. It is not just selling a sequel. It is trying to step back into a feeling people have been carrying for almost 3 decades. The premise is strong enough to justify reopening the spellbook. This time, the danger comes from inside the Owens line again. As Sally's daughter begins uncovering buried family secrets and developing powers that seem tied to a darker curse threatening the entire F. Emily, a sequel like this should not just repeat the first movie beat for beat. It needs to inherit the original conflict and let it mutate through a new generation. It keeps the core themes intact: family, fear, inherited pain, female power, and the cost of loving in a world shaped by magic and grief. The trailer also wisely leans into lineage. King and Maisie Williams step into the next generation roles. And even before the movie fully explains which daughter is which, their presence tells me the sequel wants to broaden the emotional frame instead of just replaying the old chemistry. A legacy sequel only works if it gives the returning icons something real to do while also justifying why younger characters are here at all. From the footage, it looks like King and Williams are not just orbiting Sally and Jillian. They are part of the problem, part of the mystery, and maybe part of the solution. Lee Pace is another intriguing addition. The trailer does not tell us exactly who he is, but his energy suggests someone aligned with the Owens women rather than a straightforward threat. Practical magic works best when it feels like love, danger, beauty, and doom are all sitting too close together to separate cleanly. Pace seems built for that kind of ambiguity. And then there is the absence people immediately noticed: Aidan Quinn as Gary. That question was always coming. If the first movie seemed to leave room for Sally and Gary to survive the curse and build a future, then why is he not here? The trailer itself points toward the answer the most painful way possible. Sally says everyone we love dies, and Jillian throws in a dark joke about how terrible that would be for a Tinder profile. It is funny, but it is also the kind of humor that hides a blade. If the sequel is bringing the family curse back into full force, then Gary's absence may not just be a casting issue. It may be the emotional foundation of the story. That possibility is exactly what gives the trailer some weight beyond pure nostalgia. It suggests this movie is not interested in pretending the first film solved everything forever. It is more interested in the crueler idea that curses, grief, and family damage do not vanish just because one story found a hopeful ending. They come back in different forms. They wait, they get inherited. That is actually a much stronger dramatic engine than a simple "the witches are back" pitch. Nicole Kidman and Sandra Bullock also seem fully aware of what this return means. Kidman describing the experience as magical and Bullock talking about rebuilding the house with old and new characters inside may sound like standard promo language on the surface. But in this case it lands because the house itself matters. That home was never just a location. It was part sanctuary, part memory palace, part haunted inheritance. Rebuilding it is not just production design. It is a statement that the film knows the place is emotional real estate for the audience. Still, not everything here feels reassuring. One of the biggest debates already forming around the trailer is visual texture. The original Practical Magic had warmth. It had softness, candlelight, autumn color, kitchen chaos, and that lived-in romantic fantasy atmosphere people still associate with it. The first trailer for the sequel looks slicker and, depending on your tolerance for modern studio grading, a little flatter. That does not automatically mean the movie is in trouble, but it is a real concern. When a sequel is being sold partly on emotional atmosphere, visual texture is not a cosmetic detail. It is the spell. That is also why the Rotten Tomatoes discussion around the first movie suddenly matters again. Practical Magic sitting at 27% from critics has always looked bizarre next to the affection audiences still have for it. But that number says less about universal hatred than people assume. It reflects the percentage of critics who gave it a positive review, not an averaged out score that fully captures how mixed or mild many responses actually were. A lot of critics did not treat the original like a disaster. They treated it like an awkward, tonally uneven movie with strong performances and diluted themes. That is a very different thing, and honestly, the gap between critical framing and audience attachment is part of what made Practical Magic survive. Plenty of cult favorites get rescued by irony. This one got rescued by sincerity. People did not come back to it because it was camp trash. They came back because it gave them something warm, witchy, feminine, wounded, funny, and emotionally safe to return to. It became comfort cinema. That is much harder to manufacture than a marketing campaign, which is exactly why this sequel is walking such a narrow line. If Practical Magic works, it will not be because it perfectly recreates the first film. That would be impossible anyway. It will work if it understands why people held onto the original even after critics shrugged at it. It needs the sisterhood. It needs the ache. It needs the humor that arrives half a second after the pain. It needs the sense that magic is both a gift and an inheritance nobody asked for. Most of all, it needs that strange cozy sadness the original carried so well. The encouraging part is that the trailer at least seems interested in those emotions, not just the iconography. Yes, it wants the nostalgia pop of seeing Bullock and Kidman together again. Yes, it wants the audience to light up when the ants return and the house reappears. But underneath that, there is a darker question shaping everything. What if the women of this family never actually outran what was waiting for them? What if they only bought time? Practical Magic arrives in theaters on September 11th, and the pressure on it is huge. It has to satisfy people who love the original, answer questions the first film left floating, justify major absences, and convince a new generation that this world still has power. That is not easy. But if it can keep the heart, the hurt, and the hex alive all at once, then maybe this sequel can do something rare. Maybe it can feel like coming home and opening a door you were never completely sure had stayed shut. Until the next one, keep the candles lit, keep the salt nearby, and never underestimate a movie people have loved in secret for years.